Hi, I'm Sai. Welcome to my channel called Nugget of Wisdom. I want to talk about opportunities for us to actually do things, actually make a difference. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I see all these news reports and all these debates and arguments about big issues in the world, wars and atrocities and so on, and I feel just like a spectator. I feel like everybody's just spectating and trading arguments, and in many ways, just feeding their own narcissistic wounds, feeding their own unresolved traumas. And I think to myself, I don't want to feed my unresolved traumas. I want to actually do something. I want to be involved in doing something that's going to help. And I mightn't be able to save a life, but I might be able to help to save a life. I might be able to make some sort of stand, put my hand up, even acknowledge that something is happening, and then try to do something about it. And without using morals and having all sorts of stories, we can just feel within ourselves what is right and what is wrong. And I think all of you out there, like me, must feel when we see some of the things that are going on in the world, must feel this is just not right. What can I do to help it? I don't want to fight about who's wrong or who's right, but it doesn't feel right to me. Fundamentally, it just doesn't add up. What can I do to help? And so the big issue at the moment is the ongoing deaths of thousands and thousands of people in Gaza. A large proportion of them children. And for me, if I saw one child in my local town who happened to be starving or injured or on his or her own, just rambling or running around, I would want to help. I wouldn't want to judge and say, hold on a second, before I do anything to help this child, I need to find out who's done the wrong thing and who's done the right thing. I wouldn't want to do any of that. I'd want to just help that kid. Afterwards, yes, we could find the people who had abandoned a child or abused him or whatever. But I want to help that child. I'd want to get that child to a safe place, some food, some clean clothes, some support, some help, some medical attention. That's what I would want to do. So, with respect to the Gaza conflict, I see a lot of trauma here. I see trauma that I think is almost as big a problem as the crazy things that people are doing there. So we clearly understand that if anybody or any group came into your town or your village and killed a whole pile of your friends, children, mothers, that would be the biggest shock you've ever had. And I would be likely to lash out. I might do incredibly irrational things. If my family or some of my family were killed, my neighbours, my children, and some were taken hostage, I cannot tell you here now that I wouldn't do something really dark. And neither can you. So all the people out there who moralize about Israel and the rights and wrongs of what's happening in Israel, they need to stop for a second and think, what would I do if I were in their shoes? Not whether it's wrong or right. It's wrong to kill people on any side. It's dastardly. It's crazy. But what would I do if I was in... I don't know. What would I do knowing that I was brought up in a society where I was educated to believe that certain people were good and certain people were bad? What would I do if I was brought up in a society which had crazy, difficult traumas built into it from generations ago? Things that had happened to those people which were tragic. So when we judge anyone, we have to look at ourselves and say, hang on a second here. What would I do? Second problem here is, how can you judge the people who live in a tiny place, who are all cooked up in this little area, who feel suppressed, who feel imprisoned, who don't really have much access to the things that we in the West have, who are isolated, who could be desperate? Can you judge them for lashing out? If you were in that situation, if you were living in a place that was just sometimes called an open prison, and you had all this trauma and all this suppression, and you felt basically like a caged animal, what would you do? Would you lash out or not lash out? We don't know. I couldn't say I wouldn't lash out. I cannot say I wouldn't take an opportunity to take revenge or to go out there and make a mark and take the lives of somebody else. I can't say I wouldn't do it. And no one else can. No one else can. So I think where we are living in this world of judgment about both sides, who's wrong, what we're doing is we're just basically, we're feathering our own ego nest. Look at them over there. They're the wrong ones and I'm the right one. Everything I do is right and what they do is wrong. They're evil. They're immoral. But ask yourself this question. Is it stopping any of the killings of those children? Is it having an effect right now on stopping and saving the lives, stopping them, the deaths of all those young children? And some people would say, oh, well, there's people in there with tunnels and maybe the parents and the mothers are in there involved. How many 5-year-olds have been killed? How many babies have been killed? Are they seriously involved in terrorism? Also, ask yourself, how can this be helping anyone? Hundreds of young men in Israel, soldiers, dead. Brothers, sisters, mothers and fathers lost, members of their family, never to see them again. People living in fear along the probably edge of Israel and in greater Israel, that they're going to be attacked. And more every day, because people are, there's all this judgment going on. So people band together and suddenly Israel think, we got to fight for our survival. They want us out of here. Makes it worse. And what about the thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed in Gaza? For every child killed, you must have the possibility that will raise the opportunity, whatever you want to call it. It will grow. It will be the seed of another terrorist. Terrorist as defined by the US, which is a dodgy definition, because the terrorist is another sort of ploy to say these people are evil and they just do things in a sort of non-premeditated way and lash out. They don't. No one does. Israel doesn't. Palestine, Hamas, all these, these terrorist organizations don't just lash out for no reason. We all know this. We all know this. It's generations of trauma, generations of hatred, generations building up, welling up, and desperate moves that come from these people because of all these traumas that are built up. It's like a fracturing. We know this. And if somebody commits an act of absolute pure and utter, we can't describe why they did it, the probability is they've got a major mental health issue. Something has snapped in them. A perfectly normal person who goes to work every day, who has a family, that's not evil either. Most of the time. It's going to be somebody with some serious mental health problem who probably needs to be in an institution of some sort. So as long as we take on this approach of using our wonderful new internet with all of its opportunities for us to see what's going on in the world, to basically just feed our egos, put ourselves into our tribes of who's wrong and who's right. Nothing happens. And we know this. I mean, I ask you now, do you think that anything meaningful has happened with all those countries, the US and the UN and all these, or Britain and Europe, all these highly sophisticated, Western countries? Have they achieved anything with respect to this war that would save one child's life? And has all the discussions of all the most intelligent intellectual people around the world made any difference? Not really. And will it make a difference? Probably not. So there's one country, South Africa, that's acted. And I do respect and admire the fact that they have. For me, it's better than nothing. For me, sitting here saying, I'm not doing anything. What can I do to help these children? How can I make some sort of difference here? I'm a human being. They're human beings. They're my brothers and sisters in Israel, in Palestine, in Gaza, wherever they are. They're children just like mine, mothers and fathers. So one country, South Africa, have basically put this case to, I think it's the Court of Justice in the UN, ICJ, and put a case forward to accuse Israel of genocide, with this hope that if the court judges agree to hear the case, then there's a possibility that they can try and mandate Israel to stop the war. But then the case can go on for 10 years. The judges are all appointed through various countries that have all got differing sort of history when it comes to so-called human rights. America has a veto in the UN. So it's another pantomime. It's really another pantomime. And we all sit there and watch, like in Gladiator, the amphitheater. We just watch, knowing it's not happening to us. These people are far away. But the reality is that it's the only thing that's happening. So I'm actually quite pleased in a way, because it does something very interesting. It gives all of us, me and everybody else, the opportunity to listen to the cases put forward by the countries unedited. We can say, I'm not going to listen to the news. I'm not going to watch any of these people who are taking sides. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to moralize. I'm not going to pretend that I wouldn't be committing acts of violence if my children were killed on either side. I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't. But what it does is it allows us to wipe away all of this judgment and just look at the two cases with lawyers who have used lawyer speak and evidence and so on. And what it does is it allows us to be the ones collectively actually being in a position to make a real difference. And I know what lots of people will say, what are you talking about? You can't change it. No, it is a really big opportunity for us to make a real difference. And I'll tell you how. So I've put a link to the case put forward by the South African lawyers, and I've put a link to the case put forward by the Israelis. And I've also put a little summary at the start, as unbiased as I could find, about what's been happening and what the court is all about and so on. You can take that information, you can look at it, spend some time going through the evidence on either side, without any influence from all these other organizations, news media and so on. And then you can go on Google, and you can basically find your member of parliament, your senator, your governor, your MSP, your TD, whatever you call them in your country, the people in your parliament who make the decisions to spend your taxes on weapons, on wars, and getting involved in conflicts. So this is where you and I have influence. And then what you can do is there's a brilliant one in the UK. You can just go on, you can find your MP and you can send them a letter. You put in your code, your zip code or your postcode, and you can just send them a letter. And it only has to be a few lines. And so, why would you do that? Because if everybody did it, if everybody looked at the best version of the evidence about what is going on with respect to the killing of children and mothers and fathers and innocent civilians in this particular conflict, they can then make the best judgment in as much an unbiased way as possible about whether they think it's acceptable. And then once they do that, they can write to an MP and they can say, please look at this information. What do you think and what are you going to do? What are you going to do about this? So the MP can then, in Parliament, can vote. When the election comes, which in the UK will be this year, you can decide, I am not going to vote for this person if they decide they're pro one side or the other. If they say, no, I don't think that this war there should be any ceasefire. I think Israeli is totally in the right, and the Gazans, the Hamas guys are totally in the wrong, or vice versa. You can get a direct feedback from your MP about where they stand. And then when you get that, all you have to do is make sure you do not vote for them if they don't agree with what you're saying. And make that clear to them as well. And share it. Like my video, subscribe, post a comment, post our letter. You or me individually, it means bugger all, really. But if we could get a sort of viral movement going, with all these letters going to all the MPs, you could make a massive difference here. First of all, it would not be us just sitting there as spectators. It would be us watching what's going on and doing what we are supposed to do as elected representatives, with respect to our elected representatives, and doing what we're supposed to do as the electorate, making a decision about what we think about the behaviour of our MPs and whether we support what they're doing. And when it comes to something as fundamental as the lives of civilians and children and mothers, for me, I would not care what else my MP did. If my MP said, oh, but I'm going to reduce your taxes, or I'm going to make sure there's more investment in your schools or hospitals, I would say, hold on, what is your view on what's going on in the Israel-Gaza conflict? You as my MP are part of a parliamentary process that's supplying weaponry and money to one side. What are you going to do? For me, the evidence I have seen, I would say it's pretty basically clear. Without judgment, without tribalism, stop. Just stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop the blame game. Stop trying to demonize. I know you want to accuse one side of genocide and further wound tear a big gash into the traumas they've already got and really upset them. But that in itself is not going to stop another, probably maybe 100 children, 50 children, whatever it might be, young people, mothers, and all that sort of those sorts of people from getting killed tomorrow. It's not going to stop it. And if in 10 years' time, the genocide, the court rules that Israel was at fault, how many people are going to be dead then? Would it really make a difference if in 10 years' time the court rules that what Israel did was wrong? Will it make a difference to the family that have lost their children tomorrow or the day after? Or next week? It's not. But what would make a difference is an incredible amount of emails, letters going to every MP in this country. And for me, I will be saying, stop. Stop this. And if you don't, put your hand up as an MP and say, it's wrong. It's not acceptable for our modern society. It's inhuman. It's going to cause so much suffering. It's going to put the lives of Israelis, Palestinians, British, American, European mothers and fathers at risk through an escalation of conflict, through potential acts of terrorism, retaliation, born from the sheer grief and pain and anger of people who've lost relatives and children and so on. So I would be saying, my MP, I want him to stand up and say, stop this. And if he or she doesn't do that, I will never vote for them ever again in any election. Ever. They can actually say to me, look, I'm going to bring in rules that allow you to pay no income tax. We're going to cancel car insurance and tax. We're going to insist that all companies give everybody a 100% pay rise. What was your expression when it came to the killing of children and the fact that you were part of a government that was actually funding the military hardware, the support for it in some way or other? What was your view? So for me, there's no possibility of me voting. Absolutely none for that person. Fundamental, basic, heartfelt principle. The same feeling, the same emotion that I would have if I went down a street in my town and I saw a child in need because of being abandoned or suffering. It's the same emotion that says, no, I can never vote for you as my MP. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not going to judge you. But from my point of view, I can never vote for this. I can never be part of doing something that's endangering the lives of my Israeli or Palestinian or Gazan, whoever, brothers. I just can't do it. So thank you very much. Oh, and I will vote for this person here, because actually they have a different view that is more in line with my conscience and humanity. And you can do exactly the same thing. It's so easy. And what I've done is I've written a little sort of a template email out. So in the UK, for example, you can just go straight onto this website. You can click on the little space on the page, paste in the information, and then see what comes back. And when it comes back, share it. And if your MP says, I'm going to get up in Parliament next week and I'm going to demand that this stops, that we just find some way as a country to say, stop this madness. Well, that MP is going to get, the votes of so many people. And that then starts to change the world and transform everything. Even though I see the issues around the South Africans putting this case, at least they're doing something. I feel shame that this country is just leaving it to South Africa. And why is South Africa doing this? Because they've had apartheid. Because they've seen what the pain and suffering that's created, racism, nonsense, tribalist aggression, cruelty against people, brothers and sisters of different colours. And if you take someone like Nelson Mandela, what would he do if Nelson Mandela was the Prime Minister president of Israel or the president of America, what would he do? Well, what did he do? He spent half of his life in prison. He didn't come out full of hatred for everybody. He could have. He could have just come out and said, "Oh, I hate everybody. Let's divide the country up into little groups. The white people are here and the black people will be there, and then we'll have our own lands and they can go over." He didn't do that. An amazing guy. So, although I think what South Africa's doing is partly born of trauma wounds that they've got, it's still great that it's happening because it's something. At least it's an attempt to do something. So have a look at my links below. You'll be able to inform yourself about what you disagree or agree with and whether you think what's happening there is okay and can continue or it shouldn't. I wouldn't get hung up on any terminology. Stopping genocide in 10 years' time in a court that has no powers isn't going to stop the deaths of people tomorrow. And perhaps, well, pretty much certain, we're not going to stop the deaths of those people tomorrow. But we could start to stop the deaths of those people in a few days, in a week, in 2 weeks, when we have hundreds of thousands, millions of people doing something very simple and easy, but causing a real, what's going on here? Our MPs. My emails are full with people asking about my position. What do I do? It also empowers the MPs. We can empower our MPs. If they're weak, if they have to toe the party line, if they're concerned about the funding that they get for the party and all this kind of stuff and the way their systems work, if they're weak, we can help them to be strong. Because if an MP has got a mailbox with thousands and thousands of people expressing a view that's the same, and humanitarian view, and saying stop, then that MP is caught between a rock and a hard place. He can ignore it, or she can ignore it, and just go, ignore it, doesn't matter. But they won't. They'll go, well, we got a bit of a problem here. I need to do something because, I want to win my seat. And there are lots of parliamentary seats in the UK that are close run things as well. So it doesn't take a huge amount of people to make some of those MPs in those close seats get a little bit hot around the collar. What are we going to do? And you can call them out. You can call these people out. And that's what you're supposed to do. That's really what they were elected for. They were elected to stand for you. And when a large group of people express an opinion, you're calling them to account and saying, what are you going to do? So take some time, have a look at the videos, make your own mind up. My mind was made up pretty simply. I didn't have to really do much analysis because I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't care what we call Israel. I don't care what we call the US. I don't care about pointing out who's wrong and who's right. It doesn't matter to me. What I care about is stopping what's happening there. Stopping it. That's all that matters. As I say, after that, yes. But you need court systems that work. And the UN and all that stuff, to me, it's a puppet show. It doesn't have any teeth. So really, we can create our own court system where the public respond to their MPs and say, what are you doing? And what are you going to do? I want to see what you're going to physically do about something. And if your MP comes back to you and gives you a sort of a woolly email about how they're very concerned and they want peace in the world and they think it's terrible that children are dying, but they care. That's not acceptable to me. I will just say, sorry, that's not the answer I wanted. I want you to tell me, yes or no, what are you going to do to stop the killing in these countries? What are you going to do to influence the parliament? What are you going to influence your party? What is your standing on this? And so I'm not going to listen to a bunch of sort of party political nonsense, which you will get. And by the way, if they do that, if my MP does that, I'm just going to respond by saying, it's not the answer I wanted. I'm a registered elector and I will not vote for you in this election or any election in the future. Thank you very much. Goodbye. That's it. Easy. So we really have this opportunity. Are we going to be spectators in a pantomime, spending all of our time sort of, inflating our ego and our sense of, I am right, they are bad, it's immoral. Feeding the wounds that we already have. Just taking the plaster off the wounds and just digging into the sores and the cuts that we already have. On ourselves and on the others. Or are we just going to actually just do something? If your house is on fire, what would you prefer? A bunch of people standing there, arguing about the rights and wrongs of it and who's caused the fire and who should put it out? Or somebody just grabbing a hose or buckets of water and starting to throw them onto the fire? Or calling the fire brigade? Which would you prefer? I know what I'd prefer. So, please, have a look at my links. Send a letter to your Member of Parliament or whatever it's called in your country. Post it back as a comment on my YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, so we can get this to as many people as quickly as we can. And things go viral. Have a look at some of the influencers on the internet with the most funny and, that's their thing, but funny, silly, stupid, nonsensical, waste of time videos that get 10 million views. So I think it's possible. It can be done. If a cat getting its head stuck in a jar can have 50 million views and people commenting, saving the lives of people, brothers and sisters, children just like our children, mothers and fathers, supporting the mothers and fathers of Israel, of Gaza, of the world, because this potentially will turn into and fester into a bigger conflict, bringing in more countries. So it's all doable, and I'm going to do it. And that's all that matters to me. I'm going to do it myself. I can't get anybody else to do it. Will it make me feel better? Maybe a little bit. Maybe in my core, I can say I did try to do something. I did make an effort to do something, and it was easy to do it anyway. It was simple. So I'll just do it. And then share it and try to convince others to do the same thing if I can. So thank you for listening and watching this video, and hope to see you again for another one.